Hi everybody, I'm Rob Raybon, and on today's video we're going to get back to the Barra finally. There's been a lot of delays because of work stuff. I'm waiting on some parts, and it's supposed to snow tomorrow, so we got to push the car over to the main garage, which is finally clear. So let's go ahead and move everything to this garage so we can get started. Here's our Barra sitting, getting all dirty and dusty and splattered, and it has some parts on top of it. You can see that the floor has a lot of cool colors on it because we did Ricky's Corvette. I'm really proud with how that one turned out. If you didn't watch that video, you probably should. I should probably clean some of this up, but we're going to be spilling some oil anyway. Let's just get started moving stuff. We're going to clean out the trunk and get the fuel tank out because we have this awesome Holley EFI conversion fuel tank. This kit includes the tank, the sender, the fuel pump, and the filler neck. It's a complete EFI fuel tank solution in one box. This is going to be really good for what we got planned. Comes with a 255 liter per hour pump. It's going to be pretty good for what we have going on with this in a Barra. But to get that in, we need to get the stock one out, and there's probably a little bit of fuel in this, so we need to get all that out and make sure we don't create a flammable situation. There's a lot of Mustang parts back here. This was just storage for the last couple months. It's been a while, been too long. It sucks that these are messed up because I really like these door sills. I'm gonna try to find some new ones off of maybe CJ's or see if somebody online has these, because this is one part that I would like to keep original. Actually quite a bit of fuel in there, a little bit more than I thought. Tank doesn't look all that dirty, so I might actually try to sell this tank if anybody wants it. Gonna try to get the tank out and not blow up though. So we're gonna plug this up with something just to keep the smell down and to keep the fumes to a minimum. Might actually put the filler neck back on temporarily and just cap it. We're gonna jack this thing up a little bit so we can get to the fuel lines and actually drain the tank. Don't forget to put some jack stands down for safety. I was hoping that there was a drain, and since we got this thing jacked up on an angle anyway, it's going to drain a lot more, so it'll make this thing a lot lighter. I'm gonna go ahead, take a funnel, and I got a gas can, and we're gonna reclaim the fuel and use it in our lawnmower because it's good to recycle and stuff. This is gonna be a 3/4. Quick tip is to put your light next to the gas can and you can see where the fuel level is. Make sure you don't overfill this thing because we're getting kind of close.
Much later.
Good thing I put the rest of that lawnmower gas in the Volvo because this thing's getting really full.
Much later.
There's a little more fuel in there than I thought. It's a good thing that I brought the Volvo up because I was able to drain this thing a couple times. It was only a 2-gallon canister and there was probably about 5 gallons of fuel in here because it's still going, and I've dumped this thing twice now. So if you're doing this, I guess a good rule of thumb is to estimate what you have in there and then double it. If you think you're gonna have to hold 2 gallons, maybe be prepared to hold 4 or 5, because that's what I did, and it's still going. And it smells like fuel in here. And I gotta put some kitty litter down now. Make sure you don't do this near any sparks, and don't smoke a cigarette like a dumbass or something. Just, you know, be safe. Just use some common sense with this kind of stuff, and you shouldn't burst into flames. There's only a little bit of fuel left in here, so we're gonna go ahead and plug this back up. That way we don't leak fuel all over the garage, and clean up all this fuel here with some kitty litter. Make sure you put your gas cap back on the gas can. You don't want to knock this thing over or anything. So we are not going to reuse any of these lines for this. So we're going to go ahead and cut some of the hard line. We're probably going to move everything up a size. You can go ahead and cut the soft line to get this out even easier, or you can take this out at the bracket. But we're going to go ahead and just cut the hard lines, kind of pinch it off. That way, I think these were my first alignments ever. If you do cut the soft line, you can put a tie wrap on the end of it usually and kind of pinch it off that way. I should have brought my Gorilla Pod, but I didn't grab it today. I'm trying to do all this one-handed. All right. So it looks like there's some sort of seam sealer with our fuel tank, so we're gonna gently tap around with the hammer. Probably wouldn't use a scraper for this, but we got a flat bar because I can't find my scraper because it's probably in my other garage. So we're gonna go ahead and try to get this out. Progress. We're gonna take a rag and throw it over top of the filler neck just to keep anything from getting in there. Like I said, we're probably gonna sell this. We're gonna take the rubber off too, just get a better seal. Probably put some tie wraps around this too, just to get it even more secure. Plus, if anything falls out, it's gonna soak into the rag for the most part instead of soaking on us. A nice big open hole now. You can see that there was some sort of caulk or sealant holding the gas tank in. It's probably a good idea if you're driving around a lot. So we're gonna go ahead and clean all this up before we drop in the new Holley tank. I don't know if we're gonna caulk it in. I just wanna get all this clean. Make sure the metal's as clean as possible. And like I said, get a little bit of paint in here. The trunk's got a little bit of rust in it here and there. There's a lot of like sealant and stuff. I guess this was to hold the jack or something. But everything looks pretty strong structurally. Obviously, we got some quarter panel issues and stuff. Looks like this is just like silicone caulk or something. Doesn't look like anything like too strong. I don't think it's butyl based. Some of this actually just peeled off when I was messing around. It just peels off like bubble gum. I actually try to get a scraper and scrape this up and then take a wire wheel to it. Also, I need to get a vacuum because it's really dirty. I don't know what all this straw looking stuff is. It's probably rat's nest. Or maybe shredded wheat. I don't know. Pretty sure it's from a rat's nest though. One thing I really like about this car is that it's so damn light. I can push this thing back and forth pretty easy. So we're gonna push it as far forward as we can just so we can clean up all the fuel and all that kitty litter that we put down. Because I really don't want to clean that tank area and have a spark shootout and set everything on fire. I love my garage and I really like this car. I'm gonna push it one-handed if I want. You should really wear some gloves before you put any kind of wire wheel on a drill because these things will shoot off like porcupine quills and get in your skin. And it really sucks when that happens. Safety first, y'all. Also, you want to wear some eye protection and maybe even a mask or respirator because this is going to kick up a lot of dust. Even though we swept it off and everything, it's going to make that caulk into a dust. And you don't want to breathe any of that in. So we're gonna go ahead, paint everything that we cleaned up, which you should also do if you're going to that EFI fuel tank. We're just gonna use some Rust-Oleum primer that we had laying around. Since we got a couple minutes while we're waiting for paint to dry, let's go ahead and unbox this and see what you get when you get a Holley EFI conversion fuel tank. Inside the box, we got another box. Tanks. packing paper. It's gonna be the filler neck, gaskets, a bunch of hardware, some paperwork. It's gonna be the rubber piece for the filler neck here. It's gonna be our pump. It's gonna be the top hat for the fuel pump, and all of our lines are gonna run out of this also. It comes with a fuel sock. You wanna put this on the end of the fuel pump. And again, it comes with some more paperwork and some tie wraps. It's gonna be the fuel sender. Last but not least is gonna be our fuel tank. Ignore my black finger, I got paint on it. It's not frostbite or anything, but there's gonna be some assembly involved in this. We gotta put the fuel sender and the fuel pump in and the filler neck. So let's go ahead and install all that. There are ways to use the stock tank. You could have done an inline pump and just kept that stock fuel tank, but I really didn't know the condition of that stock fuel tank. I thought it was gonna be all gummed up and dirty and rusty, but it's actually pretty nice. But I just wanted to start fresh, and that's why I went ahead and got this Holley. It's kind of better to start fresh a lot of times. Because we were on a bit of a budget, it probably would have been better for the budget just to put an inline pump on there, but just having the peace of mind that we're not going to have dirty fuel going into our Barra, it just seemed like it was worth it just to buy a whole new tank setup. Also, with the pump being there, we can remove the pump and add more fuel if we need to. Start with the simplest part and do the filler neck. This also comes with paperwork, so we can make sure that we do this right. It's pretty simple, but it's always good to read stuff. You can also paint these tanks. We're not going to paint it just because I like the silver. It's a pretty nice finish. So all these gaskets are going to be for the filler, the pump, and the fuel sender. This is going to be hardware for each one of those. There. Also, if you're doing this, make sure that you don't drop anything in your fuel tank. It'll be really hard to get out. Make sure you don't over tighten this because it'll destroy your gasket. That's it for the fuel neck. We're gonna go ahead and cover this up also to make sure nothing gets in there. Just gonna throw our plastic on top of it, just for now. I'm gonna just discard this part of the bracket. For tank depths of 6 inches to 15.5, it'll be necessary to remove the lower mounting bracket, which is this part. Discard that. We got about 6 3/4 inches to the top of the tank. So it's actually gonna be half the tank depth plus an eighth. So we had 6 3/4, so that means 3 3/8 plus an eighth. So it's gonna be 3.5 to the pivot point. We're like right at 3.5. You wanna take your float. The float that it comes with is really long. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that in with the float side facing the stamp that says float side, which is going to be the right. Go ahead, throw that in. So on the high end, you want to have this about an 1/8 inch below the top of the tank. I can't find my square, so we're going to use this flat grinder wrench thingy and go ahead and just eyeball where the top will be. I'm going to go ahead and lock that down. Check it again just to make sure we didn't mess it up when we locked it down. About 1/8 of an inch down, so we're gonna go ahead and tighten it up even more. And then we'll cut off the excess on this side of the float. Also, while you're here, you wanna take the wire that's going across and just kind of wrap that up the way it's not floating around in your tank too much. I'm gonna actually disconnect this and reroute it. Also, check all your connections again because you don't wanna have to pull this thing out multiple times. Once there's fuel in it, it's gonna wind up being stinky and stuff. And cut off your excess. I like leaving a little bit on the end just in case I gotta extend this thing out or something. And then finally, you're okay to throw this in. Put your gasket on. I have to angle the ball a little bit. So next we're going to do the fuel pump. There's a little bit of assembly that is required on that. The actual pump comes separate from the bracket unit thingy. You can see that it's marked return and send. We are going to make sure that we have our send go to the fuel pump And on the end of this, we're gonna have our fuel sock. Comes with a couple clamps so you can clamp all your hoses. It also comes with a harness for the fuel pump. The harness is just gonna plug into the fuel pump here, like so. Make sure that this is pressed in nice and tight. That way it doesn't make a spark or anything. Then these wires are gonna go through the hat. These are like a compression type fitting. These are gonna make sure that the wires get nice and sealed and no fuel leaks through. This hat is also vented. You want to run some sort of vent out of this. Also, it comes with this valve. This actually has a stop in it where this will shut off if the vehicle rolls over or something. It's another fail safe, but this is going to be the other side of the vent. You want to mount this somewhere safe. You also want to mount it in a vertical position, which is this way. So if anything does happen, this will shut off. You also want to make sure that this vents outside of the vehicle. You don't want it to vent inside because then you'll get really high from gas fumes and it's not good to drive while high. Also, make sure that you put your sock on the bottom of the fuel pump. It'll keep everything nice and clean. You don't want to suck up any kind of sludge 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Make sure you take off all these plugs. You can also see that there's a screen on the bottom of the pump. Also with these, you want to run some sort of inline filter. We're going to do that when we actually run lines, but we're not going to do that today. That'll be a couple weeks from now probably. Sock's just going to go right to the bottom of this. I'm going to have to twist it around a little bit to get it on there. Apparently my camera did not record any of this. I apologize. I really like to be a little more professional. Anyway, with the fuel pump, what you want to do is measure the tank. We got 7 1/4 deep. With our return line, we want to make it 7 1/4 minus 1 inch. That'll give us our measurement for our return line. So that'll be 6 1/4. You want to cut it on a bit of an angle too, just to have the return line kind of dumped to the side a little. Again, you might want to use some actual hose cutters, but I can't find mine and I want to get this done today. So we're just using some crimpers. When you cut the supply line, you can warm this up with a heat gun to get the pump on a little bit easier. There's also a white nylon sleeve that's here that you do want to leave on. It looks like you might want to cut it off, but you want to leave this on. And then once you have the pump attached to the supply line, you can go ahead and tighten up this hose clamp right here. And then also check the factory hose clamps just in case that one's loose. When we cut the supply line, you basically want to measure the entire depth and get the bottom of the pump pretty close to the bottom of the tank. According to the directions, you want to use the overall depth minus 1 inch. So we came up with about 6 1/4 to the bottom of the pump. Basically, this is going to sit really close to the bottom of the tank, and once the fuel sock's on, there's going to be enough room for that. You don't want to have this slammed up against the tank so tight that it winds up starving of fuel, so that's why you get that 1 inch difference on the overall length. Really wish my camera would have recorded that, but it did not. Make sure you don't over tighten your clamps. Have them pretty tight to where nothing comes loose, but don't make them so tight that these things will snap off. Then you get these 2 tie wrap looking things. You just want to take this around the return line so the return line doesn't flop around too much, and strap the return line to the pump. Don't over tighten these because it'll make the return line get clogged and you won't get any kind of return. Then you want to put your pump into the tank. You want to aim the pump towards where you want the fuel lines to go. On our setup, we're going to run the fuel lines towards the back and then out of the car and underneath. So we're going to go ahead and throw the fuel sock on. Make sure that that's on nice and tight. Make sure we use our gasket. Have this on like that. And then throw the whole thing into the tank. Let's go ahead and throw this tank in and see how it fits. That's a pretty good fit. All the holes line up. I was worried that these were just random holes that some other previous owner drilled, but it looks like they're all gonna line up. See that there was one dent in this? I think it was from probably getting tossed around for the last couple months. I've actually had this tank sitting for a little while. It might have actually happened during shipping though. Some of my UPS guys like to throw things. That's no big deal. This isn't going to be a show car by any means. Another thing you got to do when you go to wire this up, you want to tighten up these compression connectors. You don't want to tighten them up so much that it destroys the wire, just enough that no vapor is going to escape from here. Because we're not going to run our fuel lines for a little while, we're going to go ahead and throw some tape over top of everything and throw a tie wrap around this just to keep all this protected and safe. I don't want any kind of mice or anything getting inside my tank. I'm not gonna put any kind of sealer to seal the tank in, just because I think I'm gonna have to do some sort of metal repairs in the back at some point. Like I said, this isn't gonna be my daily, so I'm not worried about any kind of water getting in here. So if you're putting a tank in, you might want to put some sort of sealer so there isn't any water that gets in while you're driving, if you're driving your car in the rain or something. So we're gonna stop here as far as fuel system. We gotta get some fuel lines, and then we're gonna run them up front, and I gotta find a good spot for a vent. So that's it for the fuel tank. I think I'm gonna end the video here actually, because this was kind of a big step. I'm really glad that I finally got this in. Holley makes really awesome stuff. I really want to do Holley Dominator management on this car because that stuff's really awesome, but I really don't have it in the budget. So we're gonna be doing the factory ECU that we got from Mike Allen. I'm gonna make these videos a little bit shorter just to show more gradual progress, and if somebody's searching how to do certain things, they can just watch one video instead of watching me do the fuel tank and the pulleys and the intake. Eventually we'll do like one 10-minute montage like every car builder on YouTube does. When it does get done, which it will get done, damn it. I know that I've been beating around the bush a little bit and slacking, but this is going to be done relatively soon. I'm really getting the itch to drive this car. The next video, we're going to get rid of the power steering pump and do our pulley kit that we got from eBay Australia. Hopefully that works out well. I think it will. If it doesn't work, then I'm screwed because that took like 2 months to show up, and I really don't want that to happen. I want this to go a little bit more smooth than what it has been. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. If you like this video, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing because this thing's coming along. I'm telling you, it's gonna be done. I swear. And also have a fantastic day.